Her husband's last letter changed everything. Sorting through a lifetime of memories is a strange, silent job. You're surrounded by ghosts, the friendly phantoms of laughter in a sunny kitchen, of whispered secrets in the dead of night, of a hand that always, always knew how to find yours in the dark. For 6 months, I'd been living with those ghosts, the quiet specters of a 50-year love story. But I never expected to find one I didn't recognize. It was in the attic, inside a dusty steamer trunk tucked under the eaves, a place we hadn't touched in 30 years. My fingers, gray with dust, brushed against something familiar, Arthur's old leather portfolio from his university days. And inside, nestled between yellowed architectural drafts, was an envelope. It was crisp, clean, almost new. My name, Margaret, was written on the front in his familiar, elegant script. But this was different. The lines were tight, strained. And then I saw the date in the corner. It was from the week before the accident, the week before my world went silent. He never said a word. My thumb trembled as I traced the seal, a single, agonizing question pounding in my chest. What on earth did he need to say that he couldn't say to my face? The first few months after Arthur was gone are a blur, a thick fog that muffled the whole world. My friends, bless their hearts, called it widow's brain, a tidy name for a state where simple things feel like climbing mountains. I'd find myself in the grocery store, just staring at a can of tomatoes, with no memory of why I was there. I'd pick up the phone to tell him about my day, and the dial tone would hit me like a punch. Grief, I learned, isn't a visitor. It moves in. It was a heavy shadow that clung to me from the moment I opened my eyes to a too-empty bed, to the moment I'd finally fall asleep, exhausted from the weight of just getting through another day. The house, our house, was the center of it all. For 50 years, it had been a symphony. The sound of his heavy tread on the oak stairs, the low rumble of the news from his armchair, the cheerful whistle as he tinkered in the garden. His laugh was the rhythm of my world. And now, that rhythm was gone. The silence was a physical thing, so loud it was deafening. It echoed in the clink of my single coffee cup and screamed from his empty chair at dinner. The whole house felt too big, like a lonely ship adrift on a sea of memories. Sometimes his scent would ambush me. I'd open the hall closet and be hit with the faint smell of his favorite wool blazer and the cedar blocks he swore by. It was just a ghost of a scent, but it was enough to bring me to my knees, burrowing my face in the memory of his arms around me. Our life was a minefield of these little triggers. An old photo, a song on the radio, the first snow, each one a doorway back to a time when "we" was the only word that mattered. We met at a university dance. I was a nervous literature student trying to blend in with the potted fern. He was a lanky architecture major, with kind eyes and a smile that made you feel like he knew all the world's secrets. He asked me to dance, and just like that, we started building our world. We built it with blueprint paper and poetry books, with late-night study sessions and long walks by the river. We built it through marriage, raising 2 kids who now have kids of their own. We built it through promotions and setbacks, sickness and health, all the quiet, ordinary, beautiful moments that stack up to make a life. He was my anchor, my other half. Losing him wasn't like losing a piece of me. It was like losing the blueprint for myself. For 50 years, I was Margaret, Arthur's wife. Now I was just Margaret, and I had no idea who that person was. Of course, the world kept turning. The mail still came, the seasons changed, but I was stuck. Grief isn't a straight line. It's a messy, chaotic scribble. One day I'd feel a flicker of peace while tending to the roses he loved, and the next, a weight of sadness would pull me under without any warning. I was just surviving, day by day, until I found that letter, a solid, real object from a past I thought I knew. Promising a secret from the man I thought I knew completely? As I sat there on the dusty attic floor, the house seemed to hold its breath, waiting for everything to change. The envelope felt impossibly heavy, weighted down by everything I didn't know. I must have sat there for an hour on the dusty floorboards, watching dust motes dance in the single beam of light from the window. My mind was racing, cataloging every terrifying possibility. Why would Arthur, the most honest man I knew, write a secret letter and hide it? We didn't keep secrets. Or so I'd thought. Was it a confession? The thought felt like a snake slithering into the garden of our memory. Another woman. Had our life, our solid, beautiful life, been a lie? My heart hammered against my ribs. Or maybe an apology for some illness he'd hidden, not wanting to burden me. That would be just like him, always so proud and protective. Or maybe it was just a final goodbye, something more thought out than the sudden violence of a car crash. Every scenario felt worse than the last. To open it meant risking the shattering of 50 years of memories. To leave it sealed meant living forever with this ghost. Taking a deep, shaky breath, I slid my finger under the flap. The paper tore with a sound that seemed to scream in the silence. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small, antique-looking brass key with a clover-shaped head. It was cold and solid in my palm. I unfolded the letter. The handwriting was his, but shaky, the loops and lines strained, as if written with a heavy heart. It began, "My dearest Margaret, if you are reading this, it means I failed. I failed in my courage, and I've left you to find this on your own. For that, I am so deeply sorry. There is a part of me I've kept from you, not from deceit, but out of a foolish, lifelong fear. A part of me I thought was unworthy of the light you brought into my life. For all our years, you've known me as an architect, a man of lines and angles. But my soul has had another calling, one I followed in the shadows. A world of color, of light, of emotion on canvas. I have a place. A small studio I've rented for years. This key will open the door. It's at 113B Harbor Street, above the old print shop. It's where I tried to make sense of the world, of us, of myself, in a language I was never brave enough to speak out loud. Please, don't think of this as a betrayal. Think of it as my final draft. The truth I was always trying to build. Go there. Perhaps then you'll understand. And perhaps you'll find it in your heart to forgive me. I know you will also have questions about Eliza. Please, trust the man you knew. Trust the story the walls will tell you. All my love, forever, Arthur. I read it 3 times, the words blurring through tears. A painter? Arthur? My Arthur, who couldn't be bothered with throw pillows because he claimed to have no eye for color? The man whose idea of beauty was the structural integrity of a bridge. It didn't make sense. It was like discovering my husband spoke a fluent language I had never heard him utter. And the name Eliza landed like a shard of ice in my heart. Trust the man you knew, he wrote. But who was that man? Suddenly, the man I'd been grieving, my solid, predictable, wonderful husband, was a stranger. The grief was still there, a heavy, aching stone, but now it was joined by a dizzying mix of confusion, hurt, and a desperate, burning curiosity. The letter wasn't an end. It was a map, and the key in my hand was the first step on a journey into the heart of the man I loved, a heart I was starting to think I hadn't known at all. I woke the next morning with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. The fog of grief hadn't lifted, but a single clear beam of light had cut through it. 113B, Harbor Street. I didn't even have to think about it. I had to go. It was the first real decision I'd made for myself in a long time, not as a widow reacting, but as a woman on a mission. It was terrifying and, in a strange way, freeing.
Harbor Street was on the other side of the city, in a gritty, industrial area I rarely visited. Just driving there felt like an act of defiance against the inertia that had held me captive. Unfamiliar streets, new sights. It was a small step toward finding a part of myself that had gone dormant. Number 113B was a handsome old brick building with a dusty print shop on the ground floor. To the side was a discreet, dark green door with a simple brass lock. My hand shook as I took out the clover-headed key. It slid into the lock with a satisfying click. I hesitated for a second, my hand on the cool metal knob. What was I about to find? I pushed the door open to a narrow, steep staircase. The air that drifted out smelled of turpentine and linseed oil, a scent that threw me back to my childhood, to my father's own amateur workshop. Taking a deep breath, I started up the creaking wooden stairs. At the top was another door. The key fit this one, too. I turned it, pushed it open, and stepped inside. My breath caught my throat.
It was a huge, open loft, flooded with soft light from a massive skylight. The space itself was simple: a work table, a stool, a small cot in the corner, shelves overflowing with brushes and paints. But it was the walls that made me gasp. Every inch was covered with canvases, dozens of them. It was a secret history of our life, a silent explosion of color and feeling. I walked slowly through the room, as if in a dream. It was a museum of a life I'd lived, but never really seen this way. There were our summers at the lake house, the fiery sunsets from our own backyard, the beautiful geometry of the city skyline. His architect's eye was there in the composition, but it was softened, warmed with a deep, romantic light. Then I saw the portraits. Our son, David, as a boy, his face lit with mischief, holding a frog. Our daughter, Sarah, on her wedding day, a vision in light and lace. And then there were the portraits of me. I saw myself through his eyes. Margaret at 25, reading in a sunbeam. Margaret at 40, laughing, crow's feet crinkling around her eyes. Margaret at 60, asleep in his armchair, my face peaceful. He'd captured moments I'd barely registered, and emotions I thought I'd hidden. He saw my strength, my worry, my joy. In his paintings, I wasn't just his wife, I was his muse. This was the hidden river that had been running beneath our lives all along. This secret wasn't a betrayal, it was an explanation. It explained the faraway look he'd sometimes get, the way he'd study the light on a wall, the quiet hours he claimed to be working on drafts. He wasn't shutting me out, he was pulling me in his own silent, beautiful way. I sank onto the wooden stool, surrounded by the vibrant, silent proof of his hidden heart. The tears that came weren't the hot, desperate tears of grief. These were tears of awe, of wonder, and of a profound, heartbreaking love for the man I was only just beginning to know. As I slowly made my way around the studio, my heart full, I turned into a small alcove I hadn't noticed. And there, my newfound peace shattered. On a series of easels set apart from the others were 5 portraits of a woman I didn't recognize. She was beautiful, with dark, expressive eyes and a gentle, almost sad smile. The paintings were so tender, so intimate, it made my blood run cold. Eliza. The name from the letter whispered through my mind. Who was she? The ugly thought of infidelity came roaring back, stronger this time. Was she the great love of his life? Was I just the comfortable, stable choice? The man whose memory I had just reclaimed was slipping away again, replaced by a stranger with a secret lover. The air in the studio suddenly felt thick with betrayal. My eyes landed on a small, leather-bound journal on the work table. His journal.
My first instinct was to pull back. It felt like an even deeper invasion than the letter. But his own words had led me here. Trust the story the walls will tell you. I knew the answers had to be in that book. My hands shook as I opened it. The first entry was dated 40 years ago.
October 12th. I bought the brushes today. The smell of the turpentine felt like being a boy again. It feels foolish, a man of numbers and logic, dabbling in something so emotional. But I feel her presence when I hold the brush. Like she's standing behind me, whispering, "Go on, son. Don't be afraid." I kept reading, page after page, year after year. The journal wasn't a diary. It was a conversation with his art, his fears. He wrote about his self-doubt, his conviction that his passion was a frivolous secret. And then I found her. An entry about Eliza. April 3rd. Today would have been her 70th birthday. I found the old photograph, the only one I have. It's so faded, but her eyes, just as I remember them, clear and kind. I'm trying to paint her from memory, to bring her back in color. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. How do you paint the woman who gave you the world, then left you to find your way in it alone? My mother. Eliza. My mother? The words knocked the wind out of me. I collapsed onto the stool, the journal falling open in my lap. Eliza wasn't a lover. She was his mother, the mother he'd lost to pneumonia when he was just 8 years old. The woman he so rarely spoke of, his grief a locked room I'd never been able to enter. I flipped through the pages with new eyes, tears blurring the ink. He wrote that she had been an amateur artist herself. He inherited her talent, her passion, and her insecurity. He kept this part of himself secret, not because he was ashamed, but because it was sacred. It was tied to the deepest sorrow of his life, a vulnerability he couldn't bear to show, not even to me. The paintings in the alcove weren't of a secret lover. They were a son's desperate, loving attempt to reconstruct a face he was terrified of forgetting. In that moment, everything shifted. The secret wasn't a wall between us, it was a bridge. A bridge to the little boy who lost his mother and to the man who carried that quiet sadness his entire life. Our 50 years hadn't been a lie. They had been the truth, just not the whole truth. He had given me all the parts of himself he thought were worthy. He kept this most wounded part safe in the sunlit room, turning his pain into beauty, one brushstroke at a time. I looked around the studio, and for the first time since he died, I felt him there with me, whole and complete. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How well can we ever truly know the people we love most? I think we all have our own hidden rooms, the secret studios of our hearts. It's where we keep our deepest fears and our most vulnerable dreams. Arthur's story taught me that grief isn't just an ending. It can be a new kind of beginning, a new kind of knowing. Perhaps the greatest act of love is having the courage to share the key to that room and the grace to cherish what we find when someone shares their key with us. That discovery was the turning point. The studio was no longer a scene of betrayal. It was a sanctuary. In the weeks that followed, I went there every day. It wasn't a place of mourning anymore. It was a place of communion. I felt closer to him in that room than anywhere else. The sharp edges of my grief began to soften into a deep, steady peace. Then one afternoon, looking at a stunning painting of the coast, a new feeling surfaced. Indignation. A fierce, protective anger that this incredible work, this testament to his soul, should stay locked away. His fear had been the lock,
But I had the key. I had a new purpose.
It propelled me back into the world. I called our children, David and Sarah. My voice shook as I told them what I'd found. They came the next day. We walked through the studio together, sharing stories, piecing together this new, more complete version of the man we loved. My support system was back, standing with me in the middle of this miracle. With their encouragement, I did the scariest thing of all. I put together a portfolio of his best work and made an appointment with a local gallery owner. My hands trembled as I laid out the photos of his paintings on her desk. I told her the whole story. She listened, her face unreadable, then looked through the portfolio, image by image. When she finally looked up, her eyes were shining. "Mrs. Miller," she said softly, "this is extraordinary. This is a life's work. It would be an honor to show it." In that moment, I wasn't just Margaret, the widow. I was Margaret, the guardian of Arthur's legacy. The new role gave me a reason to get up in the morning. I even found myself picking up one of Arthur's old sketch pads. My lines were clumsy, my attempts at capturing light amateurish, but as my hand moved across the page, I felt a new connection to him, and more surprisingly, to myself. I was rediscovering not just who he was, but who I could be now. The exhibition opened 6 months later. The gallery was filled with light and people. Arthur's paintings glowed on the white walls, his secret soul finally on display. I stood in the middle of the room, watching as friends, family, and strangers were moved by his vision. I saw our life, our love, reflected in their eyes. I wasn't the same woman who had opened that trunk a year ago. The grief hasn't vanished. It never really does. It's become a part of me now, a quiet river of love that will flow inside me forever. But it's no longer a flood that destroys everything in its path. It now exists alongside joy and purpose. Arthur's last letter didn't unravel our life together. Instead, it gave me a new way to live my own. It changed everything, not by revealing a terrible secret that tore us apart, but by sharing a beautiful one that brought him closer than ever. Healing, I've learned, isn't about forgetting. It's about finding a new way to remember, a way that lets you honor the past while you step into a new sunrise.